The Grand Hall of the United Human Empire was silent as the Draenor delegation arrived. Their armor gleamed under the golden lights, their sharp, reptilian features hidden behind ceremonial masks. They were proud, tall, and cold in their expressions. At their center stood Princess Velra, wrapped in silver robes, her hands bound in golden chains, not as a prisoner, but as a gift. King Roland sat on his throne, his piercing gaze studying the scene before him. He was a wise ruler, experienced in war and diplomacy alike. He knew why the Draenor were here. They did not come to honor humanity. They came to rid themselves of a problem. The Draenor High Minister stepped forward and bowed lightly, just enough to be polite. "Great King of humanity," he began, his voice smooth and practiced, "we present to you a gesture of goodwill. Our princess, Velra of House Corvith. She shall be your people's bride, a symbol of unity between our species." Velra said nothing. She stood still, her violet eyes empty of emotion. She had been raised to obey. She knew her fate had been sealed the moment her father had declared her useless. King Roland's fingers tapped lightly on the armrest of his throne. He was no fool. He knew the Draenor were hiding something. The Draenor never gave away their own without a reason. And why would the mighty Draenor Empire offer one of their own to us? Roland asked. His tone was polite, but there was steel beneath his words. The High Minister smiled. "For peace, of course. A new alliance, a future where our two species stand together." Roland's eyes narrowed. "Or a future where you send us your discarded blood and call it a gift." The hall tensed. The Draenor warriors stiffened, their hands twitching near their weapons, but they dared not break the fragile peace. Velra's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what the king had meant. He knew. He had figured it out immediately. The truth was simple. Velra was infertile, or so the Draenor believed. Among her own kind, she was worthless because she could not produce an heir. To keep up appearances, they had dressed up their shame and handed it to the humans. King Roland let the silence stretch, letting them feel the weight of his doubt. Then he turned to the man standing at his right, a soldier in black armor, his face lined with scars from countless battles. Commander Dane. Dane was a hero of the war against the Draenor. He had fought them, bled against them, and won. He was respected, feared, and trusted by the king. Roland looked at him. "What do you think?" Dane studied Velra, his sharp green eyes scanning her face, her posture, her silence. He saw no defiance, but neither did he see fear. She had accepted her fate long before stepping into this hall. Finally, he spoke. "She's not a soldier. She's not a spy. She's just a girl they didn't want." Velra flinched, the first real reaction she had shown since arriving. His words had cut deeper than he knew. Roland nodded slowly. Then he stood. "Very well," he said. "The United Human Empire accepts this gift." The Draenor delegation bowed, satisfied with their deception. They turned and left without another word, eager to be rid of their shame. As the door shut behind them, silence fell once more. Velra lifted her gaze to King Roland, expecting a command, a new master, a cruel fate. But instead, the king turned to Dane and said, "She's your problem now." Dane raised a brow. "Mine. She's no use to me politically, but I also won't let her rot in a cell. She's yours to take care of. Do whatever you think is best." Velra blinked. Of all the outcomes she had imagined, this was not one of them. Dane exhaled, rubbing his temple. "All right," he muttered. "Come on, princess." She hesitated. "Or would you rather stay here?" Dane asked, voice edged with impatience. Velra shook her head quickly and followed. As they walked through the halls of the great human palace, a strange feeling stirred within her, something she had never felt before. For the first time in her life, she was free. Or so she thought. Velra sat in the back of the transport vehicle, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The smooth hum of the engine filled the silence, but her thoughts were louder. She had been taken from one prison, and placed into another. Only this one had no chains. Commander Dane sat across from her, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since they left the palace. Velora stole a glance at him, trying to understand this human who now held control over her life. He was not like the warriors of her people. The Draenor fought with cold precision, without emotion. But this man, there was something dangerous about him, something unpredictable. She had expected cruelty, perhaps anger, but so far, there was only silence. Finally, Dane spoke. "You understand what's happening, right?" Velora lifted her gaze. "I have been given away," she said calmly. "I belong to you now." Dane let out a sharp breath, shaking his head. "You don't belong to anyone," he corrected, "but you are my responsibility now. So let's get something straight. I'm not here to hurt you, and I'm not going to lock you up. But don't think for a second that means you're free to do whatever you want." Velora tilted her head slightly, studying him. "What do you expect me to do?" Dane leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Live. Eat. Sleep. Try to find some purpose in your new life. Just don't cause trouble." Velora frowned. Purpose. The concept felt foreign to her. The Draenor had already decided her purpose long ago, and then they had taken it away. What was she supposed to do now? The transport slowed, and Velora turned to look outside. The towering cityscape of the human capital had faded into rolling green hills and quiet settlements. The vehicle pulled into a large compound, where buildings stood in perfect lines, soldiers moving in steady rhythm. Dane's home, she guessed. The doors slid open, and Dane stepped out. Velora followed, her silver robes catching the evening light. The air was different here, clean, full of scents she couldn't name. It was nothing like the cold, metallic halls of the Draenor Empire. A tall woman approached, her uniform crisp, her brown eyes sharp. "Sir," she greeted, nodding at Dane. "Didn't expect you back so soon." And with her gaze flickered to Velora, curiosity flashing in her expression. "Long story," Dane muttered. "Velora, this is Captain Mara. She runs things when I'm away." Mara nodded. "So this is the gift from the Draenor, huh?" Velora felt the weight of the woman's stare, but she kept her posture straight, showing no weakness. "She's staying here," Dane said. "Find her a room. Make sure she has what she needs." Mara raised a brow. "You sure that's a good idea?" "No," Dane admitted, "but we're doing it anyway." Mara smirked, then turned to Velora. "Come on, princess. Let's get you settled." Velora followed Mara through the compound, her sharp eyes memorizing the layout. Soldiers trained in the distance, their voices strong, their movements quick. They were different from the Draenor warriors, less rigid, but no less deadly. They entered a small building, and Mara pushed open a door. Inside was a simple room, bed, table, a window that overlooked the fields. "It's not a palace, but it's yours," Mara said. Velora stepped inside, running a hand over the smooth wooden surface of the table. It was warm. Everything here felt warmer than the cold structures of her homeworld. "You need anything?" Mara asked. Velora hesitated. "What am I supposed to do now?" Mara leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "That's up to you, princess. No one's giving you orders here, not unless you ask for them." Velora swallowed. No orders, no commands. She had never felt so lost. The next few days passed in quiet routine. Velora wandered the compound, observing the humans. She watched them train, watched them laugh, watched them argue. They were strange creatures, so full of emotion, so different from the controlled existence she had known. Dane kept his distance, always busy with work, though she often caught him watching her from afar. He didn't trust her yet. She didn't blame him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Velora found herself sitting outside, staring at the sky. A tray of food sat beside her, untouched. She had no appetite. Not hungry. She turned to see Dane approaching, hands in his pockets. "I am not used to your food," Velra admitted. "It tastes different." Dane sat down beside her, stretching his legs out. "Yeah, well, you'll adjust." A pause. The wind rustled through the trees. "Why did you accept me?" Velra asked suddenly. "You did not want me. I saw it in your eyes." Dane exhaled. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because it wasn't your fault. You didn't choose this." The morning sun was warm against Velra's skin as she stood in the training field. The air smelled of earth, metal, and sweat. Human soldiers moved around her, locked in drills, sparring with each other, their voices sharp with commands. She felt out of place here. Dane stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching her with his usual unreadable expression. He had said he would teach her. She wasn't sure what exactly, but she was here. "Ever held a weapon before?" he asked. Velra hesitated. "No." Dane raised a brow. "Not even for defense." She shook her head. "Draenor females are not trained to fight. We are raised to serve, or to be given away." Dane exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. "Right. Of course." Velra knew what he was thinking. The Draenor saw females as too delicate for battle, as if their strength was only in birth-giving. And she had failed even that. Dane turned, grabbed a wooden practice staff from the rack, and tossed it to her. Velra barely caught it, the weight surprising her. "We start simple," Dane said. "Balance. Footwork. If you're going to live here, you need to know how to defend yourself." Velra held the staff awkwardly. It felt foreign in her hands. Dane circled her, eyes sharp. "First, stand properly. Your stance is weak." Velra straightened. "This is how we stand in court." "We're not in court." Dane stepped closer, adjusting her posture. His touch was firm but not harsh. Wider stance, knees slightly bent, ready to move. Velra copied his movements, shifting her weight. It felt strange, but stable. "Good," Dane said. "Now, grip the staff tighter, but not too tight. You need control, not stiffness." Velra adjusted. Dane nodded in approval. "All right, princess," he said. "Try to hit me." Velra blinked. "What?" Dane tapped his staff against his shoulder. "Come on. Attack me." "I do not. You're not leaving this field until you try." Velra frowned. She did not like being ordered, but something in Dane's voice told her he wasn't mocking her. He was pushing her. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and swung the staff. Dane blocked it effortlessly. "Too slow," he said. Again. She swung again. Blocked. Again. Blocked. Velra's breath came faster. She tried to move quicker, to be unpredictable, but Dane saw everything. He blocked, dodged, redirected her strikes with ease. It was like fighting the wind. She swung harder, frustration rising. Dane sidestepped and hooked his staff behind her ankle. With one quick movement, Velra lost her balance and fell flat on her back. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. She stared at the sky, stunned. Above her, Dane sighed. Lesson 1. Don't let anger control your movement. Velra sat up, rubbing her back. Her pride hurt more than her body. I was not angry. Dane smirked. Really? Because that last swing looked personal. Velra narrowed her eyes. You are insufferable. Dane chuckled and offered a hand. Velra hesitated before taking it. His grip was strong as he pulled her to her feet. Not bad for your first time, he admitted. You learn fast. Velra dusted off her robes. I will do better. Dane's smirk softened into something else. Respect, maybe. I believe you. For the first time, Velra felt a spark of something new. Not obedience. Not duty. Determination. That night, Velra sat on the steps outside her room, staring at the stars. Her muscles ached from training, but she welcomed the feeling. It was real. She heard footsteps and turned to see Mara approaching, holding 2 cups. "Here," Mara said, handing one to Velra. Velra sniffed it. "What is this?" "Tea," Mara said. "Helps with sore muscles." Velra took a sip. It was warm, slightly bitter, but not unpleasant. "You did well today," Mara said. "Dane doesn't train just anyone." Velra looked down at the cup in her hands. "Why is he helping me?" Mara leaned back against the railing, gazing at the stars. "Maybe because he sees something in you." Velra frowned. "I am nothing special." Mara chuckled. "That's what you think." Velra didn't understand, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to. She wanted to prove herself. She wanted to be more than what she was told to be. And tomorrow, she would train again. The morning air was crisp as Velra stepped onto the training field. The soreness from yesterday's session still clung to her muscles, but she ignored it. Pain was temporary. She had decided. She would learn, no matter how difficult it was. Dane was already waiting, leaning against the wooden rack of training weapons. His usual smirk was absent today, replaced by a calm, focused expression. "You're early," he noted. Velra nodded. "I wish to be better." Dane studied her for a moment, then grabbed 2 staffs, tossing one to her. "Good," he said. "Then let's get started." Learning to fight. They began with drills, simple movements, repeated over and over. Footwork, balance, control. Dane circled her, watching every shift of her stance, correcting her form when necessary. "Keep your weight balanced," he instructed. "If you lean too much forward or backward, you'll be easy to knock down." Velra adjusted her stance. She was used to standing still, to moving gracefully in a royal court. But this was different. Here, movement meant survival. "Strike again," Dane ordered. Velra swung the staff, her grip firm. Dane blocked effortlessly, but nodded in approval. "Better. But don't just use your arms. Put your whole body into it." Velra tried again, this time shifting her weight with the swing. Dane blocked but took a small step back. "Good," he said. "You're learning." The word sent a strange warmth through Velra's chest. She had never been praised for strength before. The Draenor never expected her to be strong. Dane moved suddenly, sweeping his staff low. Velra barely jumped in time, landing clumsily but avoiding the fall. Dane smirked. "Not bad." Velra exhaled, tightening her grip on her weapon. Again. Dane chuckled. "That's the spirit. A warrior's lesson." Hours passed. The sun rose higher, the heat making sweat trickle down Velra's back. Every muscle in her body screamed, but she refused to stop. "Enough for today," Dane finally said. Velra frowned. "I can keep going." Dane shook his head. "Pushing past exhaustion doesn't make you stronger. It makes you reckless." Velra hesitated, then slowly lowered her staff. She hated to admit it, but he was right. Her movements were getting sloppy. "Here," Dane tossed her a bottle of water. Velra caught it awkwardly. She had seen humans drink this before, but her people had different ways of hydration. She copied what she had seen, opening the bottle and taking a sip. The cool liquid soothed her throat, and she drank more eagerly. Dane watched, amused. "You act like you've never had water before." Velra wiped her mouth. "Not like this." Dane smirked but said nothing. They sat in the shade, resting. Velra felt the weight of exhaustion, but also something else, satisfaction. "You did well today," Dane said. Velra glanced at him. "You are not saying that just to be kind." Dane scoffed. "I don't waste time on false praise. If you were bad, I tell you." Velra let out a small breath, something almost like a laugh. Dane raised an eyebrow. "Did you just?" "I did not," Velra interrupted quickly. Dane chuckled. "All right, princess. Whatever you say." Velra looked down at her hands. They were red from gripping the staff, but she did not mind. It felt earned. For the first time, she wasn't just a gift given away. She was something more. and she would keep going. Velra sat by the window of her room, staring at the vast human city beyond the castle walls. The lights shimmered like stars fallen to the earth. It was so different from the world she had known. Cold metal towers, endless deserts, and silent halls of the Draenor Palace. Here, everything felt alive. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Mara stepped in, her expression tense. "You need to come," she said. "Now." Velra frowned. "What happened?" Mara hesitated before answering. "A message came from your people, your father." Velra's breath caught in her throat. The message from the king. The grand hall was silent as Velra stepped inside. At the center, King Aldrich stood by a large holographic projector, his hands resting on the table. Dane was there too, arms crossed, expression unreadable. As soon as Velra entered, the image of her father flickered to life, a towering Draenor figure, cloaked in royal robes, his golden eyes burning with authority. "Velra." The king's voice was sharp, controlled, but filled with disappointment. Velra straightened. "Father." "You have dishonored our name," the king said coldly. "You were given as a gift to secure peace. Instead, I hear reports that you train as a warrior, as if you are one of them." Velra clenched her fists. "I am learning to survive." "You are a princess," the king snapped. "Not a soldier. Not some savage." Beside her, Dane stiffened, but he said nothing. Velra took a slow breath. She had expected this. Her father saw strength in only one way, through power and control. But she had found another kind of strength here. "I will not remain weak," she said firmly. The king's expression darkened. "And what of the Heir?" A chill ran through Velra's spine. "You were sent to bear a child that would unite our people," the king continued. "Yet I hear nothing of an Heir. Have you failed your duty?" The words cut deep, but Velra did not flinch. "The humans do not see me as a tool for breeding," she said. "They respect me for who I am." The king's eyes flashed with anger. "They have poisoned your mind." Velra lifted her chin. "No, father. They have opened my eyes." Silence stretched between them. The king's anger simmered beneath the surface, but then his expression grew cold, calculating. "If you refuse to fulfill your duty," he said, "then I will have no use for you." The words felt like a blade to the chest. "You would cast me aside," Velra whispered. "You cast yourself aside the moment you rejected your purpose." The king's voice was emotionless. "A Draenor who does not serve the throne is nothing." Velra swallowed. Somewhere deep inside, she had always known this moment would come. "I will not return," she said, voice steady. The king's golden eyes narrowed. "Then you have made your choice." And with that, the hologram vanished. Aftermath. Silence hung in the room. Velra felt her hands shaking, but she forced them to still. A deep sigh broke the quiet. She turned to see Dane watching her, his expression softer than usual. "Well," he said, "that went about as bad as it could." Velra exhaled, feeling a strange mix of pain and relief. "He has disowned me," she murmured. Dane shrugged. "His loss." Velra looked at him, surprised. "You do not think less of me." Dane scoffed. "You think we care about your father's approval. We care about you. And from what I see, you're stronger than he ever gave you credit for." Velra felt something stir in her chest, something warm, something new. For the first time in her life, she was free. But she also knew the real fight was only beginning. Velra stood on the balcony of the human palace, staring at the darkening sky. A cold wind carried the scent of rain, but she barely noticed. Her father's words still echoed in her mind. "A Draenor who does not serve the throne is nothing." She clenched her fists. She was not nothing. She had trained, she had learned, and she had made her choice. Yet, a small part of her still ached, not for her father's approval, but for what she had lost. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "You should be inside." Velra turned to see Dane leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. His usual smirk was missing. He looked serious. "I needed air," she said. Dane stepped forward, his gaze unreadable. "You're thinking about what your father said." Velra looked away. "He has turned his back on me." Dane was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Good. Now you don't have to worry about going back." Velra gave a small, humorless laugh. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Dane said. "You're free now. No more expectations, no more royal duty. You get to decide your own fate." Velra hesitated. "And if my people come for me?" Dane's expression hardened. "Then we'll be ready." A dire warning. The next morning, the tension in the palace grew worse. Human scouts had reported strange movements in the skies. Draenor warships hovering beyond the borders, watching but not attacking. King Aldrich called a meeting. The War Council gathered in the throne room, their voices filled with concern. "This is a warning," said General Marlowe, a battle-hardened soldier. "The Draenor King is testing us. He wants us to know he's watching." King Aldrich's expression was grim. He does not take insults lightly. And his daughter refusing to return. That is a direct challenge. Velra stood silently at the edge of the room, listening. She knew how her father worked. He never acted without purpose. If he was sending warships, it meant he was considering something far worse than mere warnings. "He will demand I be returned," she said. "And if you refuse, he will escalate." The room fell silent. Then Dane spoke. "We're not handing you over." His voice was firm, final. King Aldrich nodded. "Agreed. Velra is no longer a bargaining piece. If your father seeks war, we will stand our ground." Velra felt something tighten in her chest. The humans were willing to fight for her, not as a political tool, not as a symbol of peace, but as one of them. Still, she knew what her father was capable of. "If my father comes," she said, "he will not fight fairly." Preparing for battle. The next few days were spent preparing. The human soldiers fortified the palace defenses, warships patrolled the skies, and scouts reported every movement from the Draenor fleet. Velra did not stand idly by. She trained harder than ever, sparring with Dane, learning human battle strategies, and studying Draenor weaknesses. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, she and Dane stood on the castle walls, watching the distant glow of the Draenor fleet. "They'll come soon," Velra said. Dane nodded. "Let them. We'll be ready." Velra turned to him. "You believe we can win." Dane smirked. "I believe in you." Velra felt warmth spread through her chest. She had been given as a gift, seen as a burden, and rejected by her own people. But now, standing among warriors who had accepted her, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer just a princess. She was a fighter. And she would never surrender. The night was unnaturally quiet. No wind, no movement, just an eerie stillness that wrapped around the palace like a warning. Velra stood on the battlements, gripping the cold stone as she stared at the distant sky. Then she saw them. Glowing in the darkness, the Draenor warships descended like silent shadows, their sleek black hulls reflecting the moonlight. There were dozens of them, moving in perfect formation. It was not a raid. It was an invasion. A loud horn blared through the city. Soldiers rushed to their positions, the once peaceful streets now filled with the sounds of boots on stone and weapons being drawn. Dane appeared beside Velra, his face tense but focused. "They're coming in fast. Your father isn't wasting time." Velra took a steady breath. "He never does." King Aldrich's voice rang out from the courtyard below. "Man the defenses. Hold your ground." The human warriors were outnumbered, but they had something the Draenor underestimated: determination. The first attack. The sky lit up as the Draenor ships opened fire. Blasts of energy rained down, striking the outer walls with a deafening explosion. The ground shook, and Velra had to steady herself as bits of stone crumbled away. "Archers! Fire!" a commander shouted. A rain of arrows, enhanced with explosive tips, shot toward the descending enemy soldiers. Some Draenor warriors were struck mid-air, their bodies crashing onto the rooftops. But many more landed safely, their glowing blades slicing through the human defenses. Velra grabbed her weapon, a Draenor staff she had modified to match human steel. She leaped down from the battlements, landing near the palace entrance where soldiers clashed in brutal combat. A Draenor warrior spotted her. He hesitated for a second, his eyes widening in recognition. Princess Velra. Velra didn't wait. She struck first. Her staff met his blade with a sharp crack, and she pushed forward, forcing him back. The warrior faltered, clearly shocked by her strength. "You should not be fighting," he growled, blocking another strike. Velra narrowed her eyes. "Then you don't know me at all." With a swift movement, she kicked his leg out from under him and delivered a powerful blow to his chest, knocking him unconscious. She turned, spotting Dane locked in combat with two Draenor warriors. One slashed at him, but he ducked and countered, cutting deep into the warrior's armor. The second opponent lunged, only for Velra to intercept, slamming her staff into his ribs. Dane gave her a quick nod. "Not bad, princess." Velra smirked. "Keep up, human." The king's arrival. A powerful shockwave suddenly blasted through the battlefield, sending humans and Draenor alike tumbling to the ground. Velra's ears rang as she pushed herself up, her vision blurry from the impact. Then she saw him. Standing in the middle of the battlefield, King Thalric of the Draenor, her father. He was tall and imposing, clad in dark royal armor, his golden eyes glowing with power. His mere presence seemed to command the battlefield. Soldiers from both sides paused, uncertain. The Draenor warriors bowed their heads slightly, awaiting his order. The humans held their weapons tighter, ready for anything. Velra slowly stepped forward. "Father." King Thalric's gaze locked onto her. "My daughter, you disgrace your bloodline." Velra met his stare. "I fight for those who stood by me, not for you." The king's expression darkened. "You are Draenor. You belong with your people." "I belong where I am respected," Velra countered. King Thalric's jaw tightened. "Enough. You will come back with me now, or I will burn this city to the ground." Velra's grip tightened on her weapon. "Then I guess we fight." King Thalric sighed, as if disappointed. Then, with a simple motion, he drew his massive blade. "If that is your choice," he said coldly, "then you are no longer my daughter." The battle was about to begin again, but this time it was personal. The battlefield fell silent. Humans and Draenor warriors alike stepped back, forming a circle around Velra and King Thalric. The air was thick with tension, the only sound being the crackling flames from the palace walls. Velra's heart pounded, but she stood firm, gripping her modified Draenor staff. Her father's golden eyes burned with cold fury as he raised his massive blade. "You are no warrior, Velra," King Thalric said. "You were born to serve the throne, not to fight for weaklings." Velra clenched her jaw. "If humans were weak, you wouldn't need an entire army to defeat them." Her father's expression darkened. Without another word, he charged. The clash of father and daughter. Velra barely dodged the first swing of his blade. The force of the strike shattered the ground where she had been standing. Her father was faster than she remembered, his movements sharp and precise. She countered with a quick strike to his ribs, but he blocked effortlessly, his blade twisting to knock her off balance. She stumbled back, regaining her footing just in time to parry his next attack. The ringing of metal against metal filled the air. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, neither side willing to give in. From the corner of her eye, Velra saw Dane and the human soldiers watching anxiously. She could feel their trust in her. They believed in her, fought beside her. This wasn't just about her father's approval anymore. This was about proving herself to her new family, to herself, and to the world. She refused to lose. King Thalric swung his blade downward, aiming for a finishing blow. Velra rolled to the side, then used her momentum to slam her staff into his wrist. The impact sent a sharp shock up his arm, and for the first time, he looked surprised. "You've improved," he admitted. Velra tightened her grip. "And I'm not done yet." The turning point. Thalric's attacks became faster, more aggressive. He struck high, low, feinted, and twisted his blade in unpredictable ways. Velra barely managed to keep up. Then, he changed tactics. Instead of striking to wound, he moved with precision, targeting her weaknesses, forcing her to waste energy. He was toying with her, waiting for her to make a mistake. And she did. She swung too wide. In an instant, Thalric knocked her weapon away and kicked her to the ground. Velra gasped as pain shot through her side. She struggled to push herself up, but her father's blade was already at her throat. The battlefield was completely silent. King Thalric looked down at her with disappointment. "You never had a chance." Velra's breathing was heavy, but she didn't look away. "I never needed one." Before her father could react, she grabbed a dagger hidden at her waist and slashed at his arm. The cut wasn't deep, but it was enough to make him stumble back. Velra rolled to her feet and grabbed her staff. With one final burst of strength, she struck her father across the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Gasps echoed across the battlefield. The Draenor King had fallen. A new future. King Thalric coughed, struggling to rise. Velra stood over him, breathing heavily, her weapon still in hand. "You could finish me now," her father said, his voice low. Velra looked at him, then at the watching soldiers, both human and Draenor. She had won, but what came next was her choice. After a long pause, she stepped back. "No," she said, "I am not like you." Her father stared at her, then gave a slow nod. There was something in his gaze that Velra had never seen before, not anger, but understanding. Then the unexpected happened. The Draenor soldiers lowered their weapons. Without their king standing, the invasion had lost its purpose. Some of them even bowed their heads to Velra. King Aldrich and the humans stood in stunned silence. Dane, standing at the edge of the battlefield, smirked. "Looks like you just changed everything, Princess." Velra exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment. She had defeated her father, not just in battle, but in ideals. She was no longer a forgotten princess. She was a warrior, a leader, and a bridge between two worlds. But the war wasn't over yet. Her father's forces would return, and she needed to prepare. As dawn broke over the battlefield, Velra knew one thing for sure: this was just the beginning. The battlefield was quiet now. The echoes of steel against steel had faded, and only the crackling of burning wreckage remained. The Draenor soldiers stood in uncertain silence, their king fallen before them. The humans, still catching their breath, held their weapons at the ready, but they did not advance. Velra stood tall, her staff still gripped in her hand. She had just done the impossible, defeated King Thalric, her own father, in combat. But instead of finishing him, she had chosen mercy. Now, the fate of two worlds rested in her hands. The Draenor's decision. King Thalric struggled to sit up, his once mighty presence dimmed by his defeat. He looked at his soldiers, then at his daughter. For the first time, he saw her not as a child, but as a leader. One of his commanders stepped forward, uncertainty in his expression. "My king, do we continue the fight?" A long silence followed. Thalric exhaled deeply and shook his head. "No, the battle is over." Murmurs spread among the Draenor ranks. Some warriors looked displeased, others relieved, but none disobeyed their king's command. Slowly, they lowered their weapons. Velra let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. It was over. An unexpected offer. King Aldrich of the humans approached cautiously, his gaze locked onto Thalric. "Is this a trick?" he asked. Thalric chuckled weakly. "I have no tricks left." He winced as he tried to stand, his wounds slowing him. Velra instinctively moved to help him, but he raised a hand. "I can manage." King Aldrich eyed him for a moment, then turned to Velra. You won us this victory. What happens now? Velra looked at the gathered warriors, Draenor and human alike. She had never imagined herself as a leader, but here she was, standing at the center of history. She turned to Thaurik. If you leave now, will you promise not to return with another army? Thaurik studied her, then gave a slow nod. You have my word. But there are others in the Draenor Empire who will not accept this loss so easily. They will come for you. Velra met his gaze. Then I will be ready. A small smile touched Thaurik's lips. You truly are my daughter. Then, in an act that stunned both armies, King Thaurik did something no Draenor ruler had ever done before. He knelt before his daughter. Gasps rang through the battlefield. Even King Aldrich looked shocked. You have defeated me in combat, Thaurik said, his voice strong despite his wounds. By our laws, that means you have the right to claim my throne. Velra stiffened. His throne. The entire Draenor Empire. She had spent her life rejected by the Draenor. Now she was being offered their highest seat of power. For a moment, she imagined it, ruling over the Empire, reshaping its laws, bringing peace between humans and Draenor. But then she looked at the people around her, the humans who had accepted her when her own people cast her out. Dane, standing in the crowd with a proud smirk. The soldiers who had fought beside her without hesitation. She turned back to her father and shook her head. I don't want your throne. Thaurik raised an eyebrow. Then what do you want? Velra took a deep breath. A peace treaty. Humans and Draenor have been fighting for generations, but it doesn't have to be this way. Take your army and leave, and let this war end today. King Aldrich stepped beside her. If you agree to peace, we will not pursue your people. Let this be a new beginning. Thaurik studied them both, then exhaled. Very well. And just like that, the war was over. A new future. Days later, the Draenor fleet left the human world. Some warriors chose to stay, seeing Velra as their rightful leader. They swore loyalty to her, believing she was the future of both species. King Aldrich offered Velra a place in his court, but she refused. I am neither a Draenor princess nor a human noble, she said. I am something new. She and Dane formed a new alliance, a force made up of humans and Draenor alike, dedicated to protecting both worlds from those who still sought war. As Velra stood on the palace balcony, watching the sunrise over a world changed forever, Dane leaned beside her. Not bad, princess, he said with a grin. She smirked. Not bad, human. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Velra wasn't afraid. She had forged her own path, and she would never walk it alone.